Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Every week, we work to bring you the stories of people who are working to make a difference in the world. And we have a special interest in Rotary, not simply for service above self, but in our club in particular, in education, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So we are very, very happy to have Esther Kwaku join us today. Esther is somebody I was so fortunate to meet just a few months ago. I was in Beijing for a conference, and she was running the thing. And we got to talking at some point, and the conversation just kept going because I was like, man, this person's cool. And we started sharing stories. I said, hey, so what do you know about Rotary? That kind of thing. And we're very excited to have her tell us about her work. She is the founder and CEO of the Nerve Network, which she'll tell us about. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to you. So Esther, welcome. Good to have you as a part of our club today.
Oh, really, really good to be here. And thank you so much, Rushton, for inviting me onto this platform. And hello, all members. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. So yes, as mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of the Nerve Network. We are a social enterprise that helps people living in very remote, low-income places to start their own businesses. And we work all over the world, but predominantly our programs are in Eastern Africa and mostly in Uganda. But how did we end up in Uganda? It's a bit of a back history to this. And I really want to talk to you today about some of the remarkable people that I've met along this journey, I suppose, of me wanting to be more and do things to help powerful change happen in the world. So it's a bit of a journey. My background is that I have been working in the charity sector, or non-profit sector, for a very long time. I was a fundraiser, so I was raising money for various appeals, from emergency humanitarian disasters to campaigning and advocacy campaigns. I was also one of the very lucky fundraisers that got sent to amazing places all over the world. So I've worked in the Congo, I've been to Ethiopia and Sudan, and I've been really blessed, I suppose, to meet remarkable communities and gather their stories and find out what their challenges have been in order to come back and raise money. So I've been doing them. And I guess along the way, to be honest with you, frankly speaking, I got quite disillusioned between the brief that I was given as a fundraiser. You know, you've all must have had those appeals which say, give us £2 a month or $2 a month for this or $25. And so I was doing that, but kind of not feeling like there was a connection there with the communities that I was meeting along my journey. And I want to talk about two particular trigger points that led to me then going on to create Nerve. One of them was when I went to visit the Congo. So I was traveling with a group of teachers, and they were showing me about the state of disrepair in many schools. As many of you know, there's been a long history of civil conflicts. It hasn't ended, it's still sporadic. And they were showing me all of these different schools, and I went up there to explain to some of the villagers there that I represented this charity, and this is what we were here to do. We were here to help them and give them, you know, give them things and help them to build schools. And I'll never forget this lady who, her name was Siteri. I'll never forget it because it means Esther in Swahili. And she stood up and she said, well, you know, we're already building a school in our community. So I asked her to explain what she meant by that. And she told me the story about how between her and a group of ladies, they make a round trip from the start of the mountain where they live, and they go up and they go down the other end. They carry corrugated roof sheets and bricks and anything they can carry. It goes up on their heads, and then they make the trip up and then back down again, 7-hour round trip on foot. And it was just unbelievable to me that that's what they were already doing before charity has even reached them. They were already doing that. So I guess what I learned from that is it's so amazing how resourceful and how creative people can be when they have so little. That's what I learned from that. I remember sitting in their houses and being a fly on the wall and hearing them bang their fists on the table, and they were talking about education and community and, you know, politics and what they wanted from their governments. And as a fundraiser, I'd been briefed to raise $2 a month, you know, and actually, you know, they already got it, they were savvy. And it just showed me that actually they're no different really to us. They're doing marketing, they're fundraising, they're lobbying, they're advocating. You know, they're doing all of these things anyway, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help them unlock and elevate that. So that's what I learned from that trip. And then fast forward to Uganda, which was again incredible. 4-week round trip to visit all of these local organizations doing some really cool stuff. And the charity that I was with at the time were helping people with disabilities. And I want to tell you the story about Margaret. Her name is Margaret Nakaiza, and she lives in a slum area in Uganda in a place called Masaka. And one day, Margaret took herself to the doctors thinking that she had malaria. She was feeling very poorly. She thought it was malaria. And unfortunately, the diagnosis came that she was HIV positive. So she was given some treatment, and she had an adverse reaction to that treatment, which put her into a coma. And when she woke up from that coma, her nails had fallen out, her hair had fallen out, and she had lost her sight. In addition to her being HIV positive, she was also visually impaired. Went home, and her husband said, well, there's no point in you living, you may as well go and die. And she took that quite literally, to the point where she started to plan her suicide, and calculated to the point where she decided to do it on a Saturday so that people would be around to find her body. So she was in the midst of all of this thinking, and she turned on her local radio station, and she happened to hear a DJ talking about what it was like to live with a disability and be HIV positive. She couldn't believe it, because she thought she was the only one. So she grabbed a friend and they ran down to the radio station. And there he was, and he was a DJ. His name was Dick Bagembe, and he's a local campaigner, and he runs an organization that we now work with. And he said, Margaret, you're not alone. There are many more like us, and we have clinics, and you can come and get your treatment, and there's counseling. You can even learn new skills. And so they've been firm friends since then. And in fact, Margaret is now the chairwoman of that same organization. So, you know, she went from being in a really bad place to now helping to run the very organization that she came into contact with. So it was just amazing to hear that story. And I came back from that trip, and I went back to the charity, and I was doing my day job, writing these appeals, and I just thought it doesn't match up. And I lost my mojo. I completely lost it, and thought there must be a different way to do aid. There must be a different way to do charity, which doesn't rely on telling the pity party. And I quit my job. And I decided that I would go out into the world and find other change makers who were doing really cool things that didn't sit in the traditional development space. And so I did that, and Nerve was born, and I didn't know what I wanted Nerve to be. And I didn't want to create something and then give it to communities. So what did I do next? I went back to Uganda. And I, on my own, went and revisited some of the organizations and the people that I'd met. And I met with Margaret again. And I said, Margaret, look, let's forget about, you know, the story of where you came from. Let's talk about now. Let's talk about where you are now. What would your highest aspiration be for yourself? If money was no object, what would you really want to do? And Margaret's amazing, right? She's just an incredible woman, and she's got this very infectious giggle, and she jiggles when she laughs. And you know, if she met you, she'd be kind of feeling, you know, trying to reach out for your features. She's just amazing. And you know, that's those little details we don't tell either in these charity stories. Anyway, she said to me, what I really want to do is build a resource center. I want to build a resource center where I can teach kids that have severe impairments life skills. It could be anything, just from personal hygiene to raising chickens. That's what she wanted to do. And then we mentioned Airbnb, right? So we mentioned Airbnb. She never knew what Airbnb was. So we explained the concept to her, and she said, yes, I must have an Airbnb in my resource center. So she now wants an Airbnb in this resource center, and we're building it for her. You know, we asked her, you know, I said to her, you know, I'm thinking of starting this company. What do you need it to be? She said, well, help us do that. And so that's what we do. You know, we kind of help, we find the most powerful thing to unlock in people's dreams and aspirations, sometimes it's not even money. Sometimes it's just having a conversation, because they can do it. They have resources, really. They know someone really locally, and we help to connect the dots for her. So the Margaret Project is happening, but we also work with, really talented people from Kalali, who powers his mobile phone off his bike. He learned just how to do that from watching other guys on the block do it. And so he fixes smartphones, and he's got a laptop with a music download service. And, he's doing some really cool things, tapping into the things that his very community needs, connectivity and power. And so we seek people who have the seeds of brilliant thinking. Okay, we don't start from telling the flies in the eye stories. We know poverty exists, we know that. And we know that there are millions, thousands of people that we can help, but give us the nervy 5, right? Because nerve means audacity, it means bravery, it means courage, it means having the steadfastness in challenging environments. And those people that we find will be the catalysts in their communities. They will multiply and multiply and multiply, because they're ready. And that's who we work with. And so that's the kind of basis of Nerve. And, in terms of the business model side of things, so how do we raise our money? Well, it's kind of how I met Rushton. We run events, we work a lot in the school space, we work with other nonprofits, we work with corporates. Basically, we'll work with anyone who has a really good energy and who wants to make powerful things happen. Different collaborations, different partnerships. We have a whole network of really talented people who want to do good in the world. And that's how Nerve came to be. So what did I learn from all of this? I guess I learned that when you really want to do something and when you have a mission, you need to kick the tires on that. And if it's as strong as you think it is, you will do whatever it takes necessary to make sure that mission is fulfilled. But get out there and speak to people that you would not ordinarily come across. We've missed that magic of serendipity, the days where you used to go to libraries and, look at all the different books and pick a book off because you like the spine or the sound of the title. We've missed that element because we get caught in these institutionalized ways of working. And so getting out of that space, quitting my job, meant that I was talking to all kinds of people. I lived in Thailand for 2 years on and off, and I spoke to different people that were doing startups and social enterprises, and it really inspired me. So those are some of the things I learned. So really live your mission, get out there and be curious and challenge the things that keep you up at night. We don't live in a vacuum, we live to do meaningful things in the world. And that's what I learned about Nerve, and I'm really proud that it lives and breathes today, and I'm very pleased to tell you all about it. So thank you. That's my story.
Fantastic, Esther. That is awesome stuff. All right, we've got a number of members of our club here joining us. I want to introduce them real quick, and then let them start asking questions. Because if I don't, I'll just be asking the questions because I got a ton of them. So Wave, as I mentioned your name, in Houston, Texas, we've got Rory. Judge, wave your hand there. Excellent. In Napa, we've got Carl. Welcome, Napa. All right. Shags, Walnut Creek, California. Hello. And Andrew, you're in Oakland, right? Sacramento. Ah, very nice. Okay, good. Well, we are honored to have you here, and I'm going to start the questions with the intersection of traveling and people you meet, right? So just this core piece of your story is about Terry and Margaret, right? And I think you said Dick Bikembe. Did I get the name right?
Bikembe, yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like you're saying that it's these interactions with these people that give you the energy to try and move things forward. But you've also taken skills you have in order to develop revenue streams to be able to do things with these people that you want to do. Is that accurate? And have you seen that model in other places? I think of these things quite a bit myself, but let me put that in your hands.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I guess I would call it a bit of a hybrid. I wouldn't say, I guess Nerve is not necessarily unique in terms of wanting to help people in low income communities, but we do. I think what is interesting about us is using the skills and the strengths that people already have, that we come across. So that is definitely key. It's about challenging narratives as well, especially the old rhetoric that says people rely and they're dependent on it, and we don't even come up with all the answers. We don't necessarily have all of the answers ourselves. Yes, we've got history and background and knowledge, but we like to think that people kind of know, they know. Just because people are poor doesn't necessarily mean they're less intelligent. There's maybe a language barrier that makes us think, or we've been trained to think that because they're on low incomes that they don't know what, but they do. They're really clever. So I think we like to, in our model, we elevate that. We elevate the fact that we're not here to give or hand out. We're here to unlock and elevate what's already there. And that's the message that we carry right through to the business model. So when we do events, for example, we have a pop-up shop and we sell things like, I'll just grab things like, so this is like a lanyard that we make, that everyone can wear at a conference. And, we can name everyone who's made one of these, everyone. Like Kate made this, she has one arm, she's fierce, she's amazing. And so we like to show the story behind everything. So this is one of the platforms that we help in terms of people starting their own business. So, every purchase of these 100% of it goes back to Kate and Juliet and Annette. They all get that. So it's very closely linked, and we're really proud of that as part of the model. If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I love it. Let me hand it over to Andrew, who's got a question as well.
Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, what have you found that's the most common bits of information or services that people need when they're trying to start their own enterprise?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Andrew. So the things that people need, actually a lot of it is to do around technology. So, for example, the sewing machines that our ladies use to make crafts and things, they're pedaled by foot. And if we could just get things like an automatic, machine, then that would make their work a lot faster. It's really simple things, actually. In a place like Uganda, you don't have electricity running all the time. The number of times I've sat in complete darkness, which is kind of cool because you get the good stories, because that's all you're left with, is to tell the good stories. But there's a lot around tech. It's just basic infrastructure things. We also work in a town called Jinja, which is it's one of the biggest cities in Uganda. It's the source of the River Nile, and we're sat in darkness most of the time, and it kind of doesn't make sense. But they need things like just power banks, the things we take for granted, right? That we just have. How many gadgets do we each carry? Power banks, data, smartphones that work really well. They use the Facebook Lite version. Use that, a lot of them. It's the version with no pictures, so they can still communicate. So there's definitely a lot around tech. Obviously, funding, and not necessarily large amounts of funding. It could be just the seeding so that they can buy the equipment that is needed. They really want to be quite dependent on that. And the other thing I would say what's needed is brain power and knowledge, and pointing people to where they can get hold of information so that they themselves can go and find the information that they need. And we're quite keen to push people to do that as well. It's that, not everything has to be spoon-fed. There's information out there, you can go and find it, so we're pretty kind of push things back sometimes as well, because again, I think to a degree we've miseducated in the delivery of aid. We've miseducated, I think, as well. And I've heard of communities that are entirely dependent on aid. Yeah. Whole communities dependent on aid, which is not sustainable. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Carl, I think you have a question ready to go.
Yes, perhaps I wasn't listening closely enough, but I didn't quite get how you make initial contact with people. How do you source these folks that you help?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's in different parts of the.
Yeah.
How does that come about?
That's all right, and perhaps I didn't make that clearer. So we always work through local organisations. So in Uganda, for example, we work in 2 districts in Uganda. So one is Masaka, where Margaret lives and the whole project is, and the organisation there is Medifa. So they are the organisation that helps people with disabilities living positively. And then the other area is Ginger, which is a project of people with albinism. So we work only through local partners because they know the local context better than us in the UK, and you know, wherever we are. They are the ears and eyes. They understand the cultural inferences and the deeply, you know, there's some deeply cultural things that we're dealing with here that, you know, only they can really understand. And it's good because it gives us a bit of a reality check, because, you know, for me as a brown woman, you know, I'm still Western, right? You know, I'm going in with judgments and perceptions, and actually they can explain to me, well, you know, it's like this because, you know. And I think it's also good to work with local partners because then there is a bit more of a safe space to ask the questions that sometimes we don't feel so brave to ask, like, why do they have 10 kids? I'm being honest, you know, we've all thought it, you know, why that question comes up a lot. Or, you know, how is there so much land but then there's a drought in this neighborhood? So it's the local partners which really help to make this all work, and we communicate all the time. They're my bosses, right? They're on my neck 24/7. Esther, what's going on? What are we doing? You know, how do we, you know, I'm accountable to them. They are my bosses. There's no hierarchy here. It's like, how can I serve you? So that's the kind of dynamic and the relationship that we have. And then they will identify people in their local areas, because they, you know, they work through a network, right? So there's normally the headquarters in a district, and then they've got regional branches or members, and then there's the village level. So and they're on motorbikes, right, doing this, Carl. They're getting on motorbikes, and that's their way of communicating. And then they do assessments and they keep records, and they say, okay, there's X number of disabled people in this village, you know, here we think are the ones that have real potential. So they'll help us to identify who to work with.
Thank you. That was good.
Awesome. Rory, I think you have something ready.
Yeah, I have just sort of a basic question. If you found somebody that I'm coming through okay? Okay, good. Yeah, if you found somebody that you thought had the potential that you could work with them, how much capital investment would you need to make the person functional and self-sustaining?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the functional, so just to explain, Rory, where we are. So I guess we're still in startup stages at the moment. So
right.
The short answer to that is we're still assessing the impact of that, because we wanted to do it kind of small and beautiful, right? And prototype a few different types of businesses.
Makes sense.
So yeah, exactly. So a few examples of businesses that we have are, so Kalali is one. So he's the kid that does the mobile phones and all of that. And you know, we set him up. We gave him like $100. It was really, I mean, it's small amounts of money. And with that, he was able to buy 20 phones and build a wooden kiosk in his village. And he bought a few bits of materials as well. Now, I know that Kalali could make profit and generate more from that. That's just $100. You know, it's small. It is small scale, to be fair. So that's an example. To the Margaret project, which is more like 50,000. Because we're building an entire house with, you know, 3-floor elevation. So that project is about 50,000, but that's everything. But just to mention something about that is that, so we started building that. So we've cleared the land, we've built the 1st floor elevation. It's also going to be the site of her new home, because we're moving her from the slum into a nicer area. And so what we've done in the last 6 months is they've traced a water pipe from the main road all the way down, you know, the Margarets Road to her piece of land. So now every neighbor on the way has access to water, and they didn't have before.
Whoa.
You see what I mean? And it was one of those things that kind of it shouldn't have been an afterthought, because yeah, of course, you know, every neighbor's gonna. So I think it's also about calculating the impacts on the other neighbors as well, because that's fantastic. It's 50 households that now have water because we helped one person. So so yeah, I hope that gives you the scale of kind of, you know, it could be as little as $100 or, you know, as big as 50,000.
Right. Thank you.
Shags.
Wow. That's all I can say. What a story. I really appreciate you sharing it with us, and I honor your mission. I don't have any questions. I
Well,
send
thank
energy
you.
for it to continue and grow.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Shags.
So one more question before we wind things down.
Yeah.
In shifting from a more traditional model of charity to an empowerment MO that you've got, you surely have connected with other people because you're in London, you know, other people in your area who are excited about that. What kind of impact have you seen from the discussions you've had locally in London about shifting your work?
Yeah, that's a good one as well. And I guess, you know, anyone who's sort of started a company will know the constraints of time. And I'm the kind of person that I want to meet everyone. I want to talk to everyone, and, you know, sort of focus in the right direction and maybe not go too much off track. But the kind of conversations I've had are, so, you know, remember I mentioned that we purchased a piece of land for Margaret. It was $3,000, which is not a huge amount of money. The first 1,000 came from someone I was having brunch with, who, when I was having brunch, the partner, so from Medifa, called me. It was Dick Bagembe, called and said, "We found the land for Margaret." Because when you find land somewhere like that, you have to snap it up really quickly. And he called me while I was having brunch, and I always answer the phone when they call. And I didn't have the money at the time, and I was having brunch with this person, and she sensed what was going on and said, "What's going on?" I said, "You know, there's this piece of land, and I can't fund it." And so she just, on her mobile phone app, transferred it just like that, and then I was in tears. But so, you know, so there have been some really nice things that have happened like that to people who have wanted to lend their expertise, for example, in areas like agriculture. I'm obsessed with irrigation right now, because I cannot see how, you know, there can be areas that still struggle for water management. You know, it's a really interesting thing about Africa in general, I guess. And, you know, the idea that, you know, with droughts and water, like, Africa doesn't have a problem with food. It's an abundant place with natural resources. What it lacks, I think, is knowledge management about how to harness things, you know, and actually, you know, the techniques. And, you know, we're talking about places that were ancient civilizations. They had methods, right, to harness water and grow crops. So what's happened with that? And so I'm quite keen to talk to people that can really make ecosystems of change happen. That's what I want. I want to see areas, villages that are using smart techniques, right? Fertilizer, crop management, irrigation. You go to some of these, I don't know how many of you sort of, you know, have gone to some of these really rural places, and or India, you know, because I've worked in Asia as well, and you pass through markets and it's the same crops next to each other, aubergines and tomatoes, aubergines and tomatoes, aubergines and tomatoes. Like, why is everyone selling the same thing? It's the same thing. But I mean, I'm laughing about it, but it's a real thing. Like, how can we get a bit smarter about crop diversification? So I'm keen to talk to people about things like the circular economy and, you know, waste management, and what can we do a bit better, because something is a little bit broken somewhere. So yeah, those are the kind of conversations that I'm engaged with right now. I'm really interested in tech, though. I'm keen to see what can be done around kit and machinery, and yeah, just different things like that. So yeah, Rushton, you know me, I'll talk to anyone. I'm engaged in, I'll always have a conversation, because if it's not maybe so well, if it doesn't materialize at that moment, it will at some point down the line, because you know, you never know what can happen in the future.
You don't know unless you go looking for answers.
Yeah.
So we'll wind things down. As always, those of you who are participating in the recording can stay on after we finish recording, so that we can talk a little bit more with our cool speaker.
Yeah.
But all of you who are watching this, thank you for taking part in our meeting this week. We love hearing from you, especially. So at the very bottom, there's the discuss, DIS section, and we ask that you leave some kind of a thought. You know, what you thought about this program, what you thought about our meeting. Feel free to reply to other people who have left comments as well. This is one of the places where we get a chance to interact with each other, and as part of an online asynchronous service club, we need to take advantage of the moments we have, right? Also, let us know you were here. So there is an attendance form that you can fill out. If you put in your email address correctly and you're in another Rotary Club and you want to use this as a makeup, don't worry, because having put your email address in correctly, you'll get an email saying you were part of it, and you can pass that along to your club secretary so that they can record that properly. We always like to give our speaker the last word. And so before I finish recording, I'll hand it back over to Esther, and thank you again for a wonderful and inspiring message.
Thank you so much, Rushton. And again, I'm really glad to have had the airtime and the opportunity to speak about it. And I guess final words. Yeah, I think I think a lot about mission and purpose, and I'm really enthusiastic to hear about anyone who wants to do something that's a bit different. I think where it feels a little bit sticky and uncomfortable in the world right now, if that's fair to say. I think we're looking for disruption, but we need to disrupt ourselves. And I think we need to really be prepared to go out and not just go to the edge of the cliff. I know it sounds cliche, but you know, jump off and build the wings on the way down. I think that's what the saying is. And yeah, it's not so scary. So I think that I'm really proud of the journey that I've gone on, but I'm also really keen to connect with others that have either gone on or are going on a similar journey. And yes, just to say, if you do want to find out more about Nerve and what we do, then please look at the website. It's www.wegotnerve.com. So that's wegotnerve.com. So there you go. Thank you for listening.